My main goal when I got married was I'm going to prove that this thing works. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I want to talk about why marriage is so hard or so difficult, or why it seems like a lot of marriages actually fail. Can I be honest with you guys? Everything in our society, nothing prepares us for marriage. Like nothing can prepare you for the process of marriage. Even though you have like tips and tricks and all these things, nothing really prepares you because you never know what's going to happen. You never know how it's gonna pan out. Like you don't know how you're gonna change. The reason I feel marriage is so difficult is because marriage is the one process in this life that will get you to your true self. And what is your true self? Your true self is not what we have termed as self. We live in a day and age where self is so prevalent, where it's like, I put myself first. We gotta think of me first. If I'm a female, it's got to be me, because I'm the weaker vessel. So you got to take care of me. Me, myself, and I. There's I's everywhere. I think if you look back in time, they were a little more selfless than we are right now in our society all around the globe. And I feel like this is probably the worst moment for selfishness, but I feel like the future holds more selfishness, because I feel like that's just the agenda of what the world is. The world will always lead you to think of just yourself. It's pushing for more self, and the more self we push for, the more issues we have. That's the biggest issue that I think marriage has, or that's the biggest issue in marriage that I've identified. Whenever I have issues with my husband, it's because I'm thinking of myself. Like the times when we have issues are the times when I'm like, I need to be taken care of. Oh my God, he didn't do for me. But he's not being nice to me. There's always an underlining of me, myself, and I whenever we've had issues. Nothing about God is very self. God created us for each other. We as humans are created as society-based organisms. Dang, that's serious. We live for one another, That's the original plan, is we live for one another. That's why those that thrive or those that are successful are those that produce goods, that bring goods to other people, are those that have motives to help people, are those that have a vision that incorporates the large majority. The reason you are struggling in your marriage is not because of anything. It's not even your fault. Do you understand? It's not even your fault that you think about yourself all the time. It's not your fault that you every now and then you fall back into old patterns. There are times when I'll go for weeks and stuff just doing, and I'm good. And all of a sudden I'll snap and be like, wait, hold up. I've been doing. What about me? What about me? I need somebody to do for me too. And that's not even just in marriage, in life in general. I'll be like, I help everybody out. How come nobody else is helping me? The process of marriage literally strips you of yourself. It gets rid of self. You'll hear people say I had to get out of that marriage because I was losing myself. But who are you really though? Because your identity has nothing to do with if your personality changes, right? Is that really who you are? Or are those attributes that you possess? You got to think about that very seriously, because if I decide today that I'm no longer going to be a talkative person and I want to be a quiet person, that doesn't change who I am. I'm still who I am. I'm just quieter. Not happening anytime soon. Anyway, sorry. But it doesn't change who I am. I'm still me, just quieter. You understand? So you're in marriage and you're struggling because you're like, I'm losing myself. No, you're not losing yourself. That's not who you really are. You are becoming something else that is really you, but you're just not accustomed to that. Because society teaches us you've got to look out for number one. But who is number one though? Who is number one? When you look at yourself in the mirror and you're thinking of yourself, who are you? That's the real question. Who are you? Now, I think that having an understanding that regardless of the changes that takes place in my life, whether I'm choosing to be fun or not, my identity remains that I am a child of God, or I am a spirit, right, residing in a body or taking on a bodily form in this time in eternity. I'm going to take on another form when this phase is over, right? But in this phase, I am a spirit encapsulated in a body. Or encapsulated makes it sound trapped, but like I'm not trapped. I just need a host. And I'm this is my host. Is hosting me for the time being. And I think people need to understand that. You need to understand that in order for you to function well in your marriage. So in marriage, two parties need to understand that they are going to be on a journey that is going to completely strip them away from who they have categorized themselves as, and they're gonna be one. That's why it's so hard, because it's like, oh, I just gave up something again, or like you feel like I'm putting in all the work and he's not putting in anything. And I'm not talking about dysfunctional relationships. I'm talking about healthy relationships, because people think it's only dysfunctional relationships that have these issues. No, all marriages have these issues. When I've sat down to talk to people that have been married for years, like 60 years, I always ask them the question, what is the most important thing that you can tell me as a youngin' in this whole marriage phase thing that would help me out? And the most unanimous answer that I get from a lot of these people is, he comes first, or she comes first, or like, I think about her, or like, they live for the other person. Like, they literally live for the other person. That's the secret. You have to live for the other person. But that's such a hard thing to do. One of the things that used to frustrate me the most is I would read the New Testament of the Bible, and I would read all the stories of like Jesus and stuff, and it would piss me off almost, because I'm supposed to be like Jesus. But Jesus was always out there doing something for somebody, and nobody ever did anything for Jesus. There was maybe one or two instances where somebody else came and did something for him. One example is the woman that poured oil on his feet, right? But he was constantly, day in and day out. Like, there are things that weren't even recorded in the Bible that he did that we don't even know about, that he did. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, he was constantly pouring out and giving of himself, and yet seeking nothing in return. But we live in a world that teaches that you must get something in return. And so it makes it so hard when you're in this process where you have to give of yourself. Every now and then you'll catch yourself wanting to get something in return. Now, I'm not saying that you have to give of yourself and nothing comes back to you. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you have to understand what is happening for you to understand what is happening, in essence. If we understand that it's a process that's going to strip us of ourselves, me, myself, and I literally dies, and then you become one with that person that you are with, it will be so much easier. Now, you have to understand that change is inevitable. Change will happen. Whether you want it or not, change will happen. And change is a good thing. Change sometimes feels uncomfortable, but only because your perception tells you that it is uncomfortable. If you tell yourself it is not uncomfortable, it won't be uncomfortable. If you tell yourself, I don't care what I've learned till this very point, I want to make my marriage work, and I want to see this thing through, and I want to know who I really am through this process, you will make it to the end. A plant has to struggle to break through the ground, right? And then finally it buds or whatever and stuff like that. But we don't understand. We look at it and we're like, oh, such a beautiful plant. That rose bush is so beautiful. But the process for that seed to sprout, like break through its shell and then begin to pop through the hard ground, depending on what kind of ground you gave it, it's a process. And that process is painful sometimes. That process feels like I'm giving all I can. Imagine that plant and you don't water it, and you get a plant that survives you not really taking good care of it, imagine the stress that plant had to go through, right? It's kind of like that. So in marriage, you have to remember that you go through a process. It's a process, and it's a constant process. It never ends. It's a constant process of growth. I am not the person I was when I started out. You look at my husband now and you like, ooh, or you look at me now and you're like, ooh, no. He put in work into who I am, and I put in work into who he is. And God has enabled us to be able to walk out that process. It's doable. It's doable. My main goal when I got married was, I'm going to prove that this thing works. It works. It works. But if you're not ready to live sacrificially, marriage is not for you. If you are not ready to give up self, marriage is not for you. When I tell you this thing, it will break and crack you. It will break and crack you. You are not prepared for marriage if you are selfish. You are not prepared for marriage if you don't know how to share. You are not prepared for marriage if you feel like you have to be dependent on yourself. Marriage is a process of codependency. We live in a day and age that says codependency is a bad thing. No, it's not. You're supposed to be dependent on each other. You're supposed to be so dependent on each other that if anything happens, it literally feels like the world is falling apart if one person is missing in the equation. If we're going to exemplify our marriages according to what God wanted it to be, then this is what it takes. But if you want to do it the worldly way, you want to do it a different way, I'm not sure it's going to work out. That's when people fail. I'm not going to say it's not a painful process sometimes. It's a painful process sometimes. When I look back on who I was and who I am now, oh my God, it's something to celebrate. And I feel like that's what's beautiful about marriage, is just that growth. I've become such a better person in this process. Has it been easy? Absolutely not. If you can get to a place of selflessness on your own, that's okay too. You don't need to be in a marriage to be selfless. But marriage is one of those structures that have been put into place to get you there almost quicker, I would say. Because you have somebody that's checking you in essence. Like, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Yeah, but that's what I really want to just talk about in this video and stuff. I hope that this helps somebody out. You're not alone in this process. Understand that it is a process that's supposed to strip you of yourself. Me, myself, and I has to die away, and it has to be a union. The two shall become one is not a sexual thing. The two shall become one is a literal thing, where both of you lose yourselves and literally become one person. So if you talk to people that have been married for a really long time, you could literally separate them and put one person in one room and put the other person in another room, and they would give you the same answer. It's literally a process of becoming one. In that process of becoming one, you will lose what you think is your identity. But that's not what your identity is. Your identity always remains that you are first and foremost a spirit created in the image of God, residing in a body. Okay? Your soul is where your personality comes from, and that changes. Your personality changes, jobs changes, titles change, things like that change. It's okay for them to change. It's okay for them to change. You could lose babies. You could lose a husband. You could lose a job. You could lose possessions. Things happen. Things change. Stop identifying yourself as those things, those positions, those titles. That's not who you are. Because when those change, it will rattle you up. It will make you feel like you have no grip on life. That's what gets us all riled. It gets us all riled. I can't even say what I need to say. Lord Jesus, help me. Oh, that's what gets us all rattled up. And then we want to quit. But don't quit. Don't quit. I'm in this with you. Reach out to me if you need to. We're in this together. Marriage is a beautiful thing. It really is. Yes, there's been bad examples, and yes, there's been people that failed badly at it, and yes, there's been really, really sad situations of it coming to an end, but marriage works. It works when you identify that you actually are becoming selfless. It works. It really does. Thank you guys for watching my video. Those of you that are recently subscribed to my channel, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're not subscribed already, I hope that you would choose to subscribe to my channel. Do share this video with someone that might be going through something right now. I really do feel like marriages are being tested at the moment for everyone. If you want to invest in your marriage by praying, that'd be a good place to start, right? Prayer is not for the other person. Prayer is for yourself. Because sometimes the thing that needs to change is not that person, it's actually you. I pointed to myself. Because there's times when you're praying and all you really need is a little bit of patience to deal with a situation. So prayer works on yourself. Thank you guys for watching. Do share this video, like, comment below. I would love to get feedback on this video and share your thoughts with me. What do you think about what I said? All right, take care.